Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles when you show up.
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
Chris
Caring
Dowhouse,
about these are pointless in fantasy.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
That's right. You better be here and better be ready to dominate because we're 8 days, not even away from kickoff on Thursday Night Football between the Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. Cannot wait. Thanks for joining the show. Operation Domination here. Dan Mader, Adam LaRue, Chase Thornton, Chris Dowhauer, the whole crew in the house because we got the perfect draft part 2. If you missed part 1, that was last week, where we did the first 9 rounds, picking from a range of 7 to 9 on the first round and snaking our way through, using our rankings and tiers, nominating and making picks. So you guys got to get an idea of, while you're following us, what you can do leading into your drafts. And if you haven't drafted your home leagues yet, that means you are this weekend. And this is the time to make sure you nail down that draft status. And we're going to get into that today. We also have some breaking news to talk about. Fellas, a lot drops this past week. Cut was absolutely insane. We saw a lot of transactions. So let's go ahead and dive right into that. Cue the breaking news. All right, so to start things off here, because it was a lot. It was a lot. CeeDee Lamb. We'll start with the good. CeeDee Lamb, 4-year contract, $136 million, $38 million guaranteed. I think that was $38 million guaranteed. I think that was the biggest surprise of the whole thing. So what do you guys think about CeeDee Lamb now? He comes in a little bit less than 2 weeks to get ready for the season, but going to have that time, going to be in week 1, unlike, say, a Jamar Chase, unlike, say, a Brandon Aiyuk. Does he go back up to being your number 1 on your board, Adam?
No, but it does quell some concerns. And for me, he was starting to get close to a conversation about him and Justin Jefferson for that 2-3 spot. And that conversation has faded from my mind. He is firmly going to be my wide receiver 2 heading into week 1 behind Tyreek Hill for me personally. But no longer, it's firmly him ahead of Justin Jefferson for me.
Yeah, I did move him back into my number 1 spot. So some of the interesting reports coming out, right? He put on 14 pounds, apparently, of muscle. So he's going to be a lot stronger. Obviously, looking to take more hits over the middle of the field, kind of like that. I am still a little bit worried about soft tissue injuries. He talked about some of his training program and what he was working on, due diligence, but it's not the same until you get out there on the field. We all know that. Knowing that this is the one guy who could be in line for 200 targets, and that he did at least get back with at least some time to ramp up, it's hard for me not to have him at my number 1. Tyreek Hill, though, is my number 2 because Jamar Chase pulled a little doozy on all of us, comes back to practice. Zach Taylor opens up his big fat mouth, and Jamar Chase said, hold on. This isn't in the clear yet, buddy boy. Chris, what did you make of that situation?
Yeah, it was kind of odd. I mean, Jamar Chase made it obvious that he was trying to show his face at practice, so it seemed like he was going to come back. There was going to be pushing back this contract talk while he was returning, kind of, play good soldier. And then the news comes out today that backtracking, coach speak, we don't know what Jamar's situation is going to be. It's a day-to-day situation. I think what you're seeing right now is the guy who's trying to maybe get closer to the contract being hashed out, Dan. I mean, it's a good thing. Maybe there was some, news that maybe of the CeeDee contract, now he has some parameters which you're working with. Maybe Jamar is looking at a contract where he's not going to sign something, he's not going to practice, I should say, before he signs something. So I actually see maybe as something good versus something negative, but we'll still see what happens.
Yeah, we'll still see what happens. The point is that in that situation, Jamar Chase at least is still in the building. And there was some at least expectation that maybe he'll still be willing to play, even if that contract doesn't get done before week 1. We'll see. But right now, I have to put him at the bottom of my elite tier, below St. Brown at 5, just because it's too crazy right now. It's absolutely too. I am not at the point yet where I'm putting him below my next tier, which is like A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson. I haven't quite put him there yet. But if we get into next week and this thing is still like nobody knows what the hell's going on, he might have to drift a little bit. But of course, by then, you might have already had your drafts this weekend. So, Chase, just to kind of like tap on that a little bit, are you comfortable with drafting Jamar Chase, say, at the wide receiver 5? Or are you going to move him down a little bit lower than that, knowing that you may not know when you go to your draft day?
Well, I had him ranked at 4 anyway. I haven't been getting a ton of him just because of where I had him ranked and where I've been drafted in most of my leagues. Yeah, I mean, today's news wasn't encouraging. I kind of ran a victory lap when Lamb signed because I never did downgrade him. I always had him up there. Jamar Chase, however, there are a lot of guys out there who had him ranked number 1 possibly on their board. He does have to drop. I had him at number 4 anyway. I agree with you. I feel a little bit safer taking, say, Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I'm fine taking Jamar Chase in the second half of round 1 still, because we know what kind of production he can give you. And if we get a full healthy season out of his quarterback, I think the sky's the limit for Jamar Chase. I'm still comfortable taking him in the second half of round 1, but he's no longer a top 5, top 6 type overall pick for me until and unless he can get his butt in some pads at practice instead of street clothes.
Yeah, and just continuing on here. So we might as well talk about Brandon Aiyuk of it all. I mean, you can't get away from talking about these receivers. I'll talk about Brandon Aiyuk. So, like, John Lynch made this a story today. Not that it already wasn't, but, he just made an extra story today. We expect Brandon Aiyuk to be out there in practice today. That was the expectation all the time if he was on the team at this point. And then Brandon Aiyuk doesn't show up to practice. And, it seems like we're back here at square one, and there's some frustration now, visibly in the public coming from the San Francisco front office. The point is this: he's kind of the same boat as Jamar Chase. Nobody knows what's going on. He's still not in practice today. We're getting very, very close to the beginning of the season. Now, unlike those other guys, though, because we know they can be elite wide receiver 1s, Brandon Aiyuk doesn't have that kind of target distribution. And for me, and you guys can tell me if I'm crazy or not, but Brandon Aiyuk's now my wide receiver 25. I don't even have him inside my top 24 anymore at this point. Not only staying as efficient as he was last season, going to be a tall task anyway, with expected some regression, you're still dealing with the problems of everybody's got to eat. Deebo's got to eat. Chris McCaffrey's got to eat. George Kittle's got to eat. And now you haven't had ramp-up time. And now I don't even know when that's going to be, because we still seem like we're at a huge impasse, maybe even more so than, say, the Chase and Cincinnati situation. So am I crazy, guys? I don't care who answers.
No, I haven't moved him down yet, only because I haven't finalized my last set of rankings. I'm going to be working on that, getting them out before the weekend comes. But when they do come, yeah, he's going to have to drop for me. I already had his projections were a little bit lower than I think some had, but based on kind of the aggregate of how I put my rankings together, I still had him at 19 overall. He'll be dropping for me, yeah, just because we know he's not necessarily the alpha dog in that offense. There's at least 2 more dogs in front of him, if not 3 on any given day. But also, like you just said, he's got to have at least some kind of ramp up time. If Chase gets in the building tomorrow, he's at least got a week. Aiyuk doesn't look like he's anywhere near the point where he's going to be stepping on the practice field. So yeah, I am starting to worry about Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah. Yep. As a 49er fan, I am too. Trust me. Okay. So we get done with the receiver news. Russell Wilson gets named the starter. Pittsburgh showing yet again they're stupid and stuck in being tradition and loyal despite their nose. And Arthur Smith, will continue to do Arthur Smith things. I don't think we have too much more we really have to add to that. Some other ones I'm going to run through real quick, and then I want to get to a little bit of Kyren Williams talk. TJ Hawkinson starting on the pup. That's something we expected to begin with. Nick Chubb starting on the pup, also expected. This one, a little bit of a surprise. It shouldn't be too surprising, but Jonathan Brooks starting on the pup, that was kind of a 50-50 coin toss there. So Chuba Hubbard will get the start at the beginning of the season. But we talked about this before. When it comes to Brooks, you were drafting him for the second half of the year anyway. Marshawn Lloyd. So we can talk a little bit about this too. So this is real curious with the Green Bay backfield. A.J. Dillon goes on season-ending IR. He was out of there. Now, Marshawn Lloyd, we thought there was actually even reports that he was going on the pup, maybe even the IR. Turns out he's going to avoid both. but he's barely practiced throughout training camp. He still is not 100% as I understand it right now anyway, even if he is able to get some practice time in before week 1. So I'll go to the Packers fan on this one. Josh Jacobs just moved up into my RB10 because the only thing I was worried about before is him not getting enough volume to sustain being an RB1 because of what Matt LaFleur's history was in the past. Well, I don't see where the option is going to be taking away from touches from Josh Jacobs right now, at least at the beginning of the year.
No, all the news that we had heard, actually, we had heard, reports that Dillon was looking good and better than they had expected when he was playing still before the injury. We were hearing kind of the opposite about Marshawn Lloyd, that he wasn't necessarily impressing all that much. And then here out of nowhere, we get this bolt out of the blue, and Dillon is gone and Lloyd is not gone, but yet he's not really there either. They must be comfortable enough with what they saw out of Emmanuel Wilson last year to think that they can get through with him. And like you said, running Jacobs into the ground, apparently, unless they can get Marshawn Lloyd back. So, with the volume, I think we were all hoping that Jacobs would get that kind of volume, because in the past, when he's gotten that kind of volume, he has been a top tier fantasy running back. If he gets that now, which it looks like he's going to have to for at least the first month or so, the sky could be the limit for him. I definitely will be, like you said, moving him up in my rankings when I release him this weekend.
Chris, I want to go to you on this one because you've been a Donta Foreman guy. You've been the one on this show who's talking about he's going to have the red zone touches. Now, he gets cut. Now, it does not mean that he's not going to get signed after they do their roster bit and get back on the 53-man active roster. That is possible. But there's also been reports about Pierre Strong has been actively running as the RB2. Now, some of that could be because Foreman got hurt earlier on in training camp. But I wanted to get your take on it. Are you worried at all that the Browns are not going to bring back Donta Foreman? If that were to be the case, what would that do for Jerome Ford in your mind? Or do you think Donta Foreman's going to sign? He's going to go back into the role that you were expecting the entire time?
No, I think it's going to be Jerome Ford's job. I think Donta Foreman's going to be they can rotate if need be. But I think Jerome Ford showed you last year that he's going to continue to be that kind of Nick Chubb role, and then you're going to have Pierre Strong be that Kareem Hunt role. So I think you see the kind of establishment of the roles already kind of dictated. They've only got to go through a couple of weeks. I think you're still going to see maybe other guys be rotated in that backfield at some other points. But right now, to start off the season, I think right now just makes Jerome Ford very secure, and Donta Foreman is somebody who might get a chance down the road.
Jerome Ford is my RB 28 now. I have him one spot behind Zamir White. It was actually one of the biggest jumps as far as like that tier goes. Because look, this time of the year, we've done our projections throughout the summer. We're not making big jumps with our top 36 guys at running back, top 36. He jumped from 35 to 28 for me because I'm like, look, you're going to be the guy. And even when Nick Chubb comes back, Chris, I think you'd agree with this. I don't think Jerome Ford goes away.
No, I definitely agree. I think this backfield showing you that traditionally for the last couple of years now, they try to rotate two guys if possible, and necessarily pigeonhole roles. There's different guys utilized in the pass situation, or even in the red zone. We saw Kareem Hunt not catch the ball, but actually be really effective in the red zone last year and score touchdowns. So I think there's still going to be a role there for Jerome Ford down the road, and I think your ranking moving him up.
All right, so one more piece of news, and then we'll end the breaking news segment with Kyren Williams. I know the breaking news segment is going a little bit long, guys, but there was a lot to talk about, and we have to. And if it wasn't for the rest of our show, we could probably turn the whole show into the breaking news that's happened in the last week. But Adam, I want to get your reaction. Dalvin Cook to Dallas.
I mean,
sorry.
Look, I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world. I think it's one of those. There's been a few running backs in recent memory that have just bumped practice squad to practice squad, and we're like, oh wow, it's a headline that such and such is joining the backfield. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not going to be shocked if he makes the active roster for the same reasons that Zeke is there. He's a veteran running back. He's going to go to the right hole. He's going to make the right read. He's going to pass protect competently, and that might just be enough in this backfield, to be honest with you. But it's not like an important signing. I don't think it really changes things much for Zeke. It's definitely, if you were someone that in zero RB builds was buying in on Dowdle, this is definitely concerning to you. But if you were on Zeke or otherwise were interested in this offense, I don't think it changes anything.
I mean, like, you want to get out the walkers and the crutches and just get the entire backfield, because that's exactly what Dallas is going to be pretty much at this point.
They got to sell jerseys so that they can afford the CeeDee contract. It makes sense.
No, yeah, like you said, Dalvin Cook taking over in a long, proud tradition of guys like Melvin Gordon and Latavius Murray. Yeah, jumping practice squad to practice squad
there on the Chiefs.
Yep. Yeah. No, I would like this signing better if they hadn't already made it when they brought Zeke back, but.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Adam, right back to you real quick. Were you taking Zeke or Rico as a flyer before? And if you were, are you not now because of this?
I have both of them in spots as a flyer, just if they happen to fall. I'm probably going to do the same with Zeke, and I'm maybe a little more cautious with Dowdle. Maybe in Dynasty, I might throw a flyer because he is pretty cheap, especially after the news. But neither of them were people who at cost I was necessarily trying to get, but if they fell, definitely willing to. And Zeke, my opinion hasn't really changed. If anything, I think they're a little lower on Dowdle than the public might have been, and therefore Zeke might get a little bit more than expected. So he might be a little interesting. I don't think that there's anything that Dalvin Cook showed me on the field last year that he does any better than anything Zeke does.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Hey, Dominic, thanks for joining the show. Garrett Wilson or Justin Jefferson at pick 8 in a 10-team league PPR. I think I can safely speak for the entire panel. Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in the league. Yes, Justin Jefferson, even with Sam Darnold, is still the pick. I'm pretty sure we all have it ranked the same way. All right, so this is where I wanted to end the breaking news segment with Kyren Williams talk. I have a bone to pick with almost the entire fantasy industry right now on this, losing their minds because Sean McVay said he's going to return punts. This is what I'm not understanding. Sean McVay didn't say he's going to return punts and now is a special teams player and therefore in a 50-50 committee with Blake Corum. That's not what he said. In fact, I have the quote right here. Kyren Williams is going to be our punt returner. It's another opportunity to get him touches and impact the game. You feel comfortable with that because of the confidence in Blake Corum and Ronnie Rivers being able to spell him if need be. Key points there. He's not talking about taking away touches from Kyren Williams as a running back and giving to him as a punt returner. He's talking about giving Kyren Williams more touches in more ways on the field. And I'm literally listening to people lose their minds. And Kyren Williams is like, he's got to be RB15 now or RB20. Or I'm like, what are you talking about? Because he's going to return the points.
Personally.
Thank you, Adam.
That was a vote of confidence to me. I don't know where everyone got that. I agree.
It's a vote of confidence, but I think people are worried that because he's returning punts, he's opening himself up to more injury, as if they don't open themselves up to injury every time they take a snap. But we've seen in the past Sean McVay be real weird and fickle with how he uses his running backs. We've seen guys fall out of favor after short stretches of, ineffectiveness or injury or whatever else. And I think people are worried that with Kyren Williams not having all of the capital behind him that some of these other guys have, that if and when he gets hurt, Corum steps in, looks good. All of a sudden, now we're out Kyren Williams, who we were taking in the first or second round. Now that guy's a complete bust, and Blake Corum takes the lead. I agree with you. I think people are overblowing it, but I see where the concern is. It's not necessarily great news if you're one of his fantasy owners, but I do agree that it seems like a vote of confidence from his coaching staff that he's valuable to that team for the time being.
Here's the thing. If that was the narrative that you're worried about him getting more hurt on special teams, I can understand it a little bit. That's not what people are saying. That's not what people are saying. You're right. The narrative, you're returning punts. Now all of a sudden this is a committee. That's the narrative, which is ridiculous. And it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
With Ronnie Rivers too.
I had to, with Ronnie Rivers. Thank you.
Just to be clear, very briefly on one piece of context, the Rams as a team last year received 28 punts. That's what we're talking about. For the record, just
we're talking about him getting less than two more touches a game.
28 touches throughout the entire season.
2 touches a game.
This is a defense without Aaron Donald, by the way.
Right. So see how that number is going to move.
Yeah, I just had to get that off my chest because it's the most ridiculous thing I've heard in the last couple of days is the fantasy injury just losing their minds over that piece of content. But let's get a little quick spot in here, and then we'll get into our actual perfect draft part 2 of